Good afternoon, board members. My name is Joshua Halsey. I'm the Executive Director for the Washington State Charter School Commission, and I want to say thank you for inviting me to participate in a portion of your meeting tomorrow on the 8th, where I hope to answer any questions that you have regarding charter public schools in Washington. I work for the Washington State Charter School Commission, which is a state agency that is tasked with authorizing and overseeing charter public schools throughout the state. Authorizing is the practice of looking at nonprofit organizations who want to start charter public schools here in Washington, and that process is very rigorous. It is a 6-month-long process that includes external evaluators and ultimately results in the commission rendering a decision on which of those applications have met the merits as established in our process and therefore would be authorized, is the word we use, to open as a charter public school. So the commission is an 11-member body, and those members are appointed by the governor and by the caucuses, both majority and minority in both the House and the Senate. And then we have representation from the State Board of Education. Harry and Martin Morris is on the commission, and the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Gail Pauley, is also on the commission. So we have 11 members who decide on authorizing charter schools, and then they play a role in the oversight. So we oversee charter public schools that we authorize and they become operational. And that oversight looks at 3 main areas. So one is that they look at academic outcomes. And so that's the most important thing we look at, and we look at that on an annual basis of how are the students doing in that charter school. And we expect students in a charter public school to do as well, if not better, than the schools that they would otherwise attend. In addition to the academic outcomes, we look at compliance through the organizational framework. So we look at whether or not that board of the school is really doing its job around its fiduciary responsibilities. In addition to that, is the school protecting student rights, staff rights? Are they complying with the Open Public Meetings Act, public records requirements, things like that? And we look at that on an annual basis. But we don't look at it alone. We look at it with the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction and with the State Auditor's Office, who does accountability audits on an annual basis for our charter schools. The final area we look at is financial. So we look at near-term indicators of financial health as well as long-term indicators of financial health or sustainability indicators. Again, we look at those on an annual basis. And the way we look at that is through an independent CPA or certified public accountant audit that happens on an annual basis with these charter schools. So the schools are held to an extremely high bar around accountability. So that's what we do when we oversee schools. So right now we have 7 schools in the portfolio, meaning we have 7 schools that are in operation. Those 7 schools are primarily in the King and Pierce County area, with 1 school, Innovation Public Schools, which is in Walla Walla. We have an additional school that has been in operation under the Spokane Public Schools umbrella for the last 4 years, who will be coming into the commission's portfolio. And why is that? Well, they had to transfer their contract from Spokane to the commission. And the reason that they had to do that is that their facility that they ended up locating in permanently, a 100,000 square foot facility, is in Meade School District, not in Spokane. And as a result, they had to transfer their contract. You approved this earlier this year. We're excited to have Spokane International Academy come into the portfolio. And so that's an additional school that will be receiving oversight from us this year. In addition to those 8 schools, we have 3 more schools that are getting ready to open this fall. The first one is Impact Salish C Elementary. It's the 2nd Impact public school that has been authorized and that will open. They will eventually permanently locate down in the Othello area in the Rainier Valley in Seattle. Right now, that isn't fully built out yet. That facility isn't fully built out. So they're going to temporarily co-locate with the Puget Sound Elementary, the first Impact Public School charter school up in Tukwila. So that's the first school that's getting ready to open this fall. The other one is Catalyst Bremerton. It's our first charter public schools over in the Kitsap County area. They are getting ready to open as well this fall. There'll be a K-8 model. And then we have Cascade Midway, which is a high school. It's a big picture model type of high school. 912, they'll be opening down in South Highline North Federal Way area. So those are the 3 additional schools. that will be coming online or beginning to open this fall. So that brings our portfolio to 11. We had an additional charter school that we authorized that was in the planning stage, but they just ran into facility challenges and took an additional planning year. So they'll be planning again to open and launch in the 21-22 school year. So those 11 schools, I can talk to you a little bit more about that during our time together, but right now, just give you a high level overview. In addition to those, we had just authorized 4 additional schools across the state, and that happened 2 weeks ago. So the first school is Pinnacles Prep, which is in Wenatchee. They will be a 6-8 school model with about 360 students at capacity. Really, really neat model, deep level of community engagement we expect of all of our applicants. And so we're excited to see a first charter public school in Wenatchee. They will open in the 21-22 school year. In addition to Pinnacles Prep, we have Pullman Community Montessori, which will be in Pullman. And they are looking at a K-9 model. It is Montessori, and it's going to be a smaller school, about 242 students at full capacity. It's our first Montessori school in the portfolio. Very excited about that. And then the other 2 schools that we are looking to are authorized and looking to open next school year, the 21-22 school year, is Impact. They have 1 school in Renton that they were just authorized to open. That'll be up in the Benson Hill area. And then the other is in Tacoma. So Renton and Tacoma. In Tacoma, they'll be located at the old Destiny Middle School building there in south, I guess you could say that's East Tacoma. So that said, those are the 4 schools that are looking to open in the 21-22 school year that were just recently authorized. That would bring our portfolio up to 15 schools. Then we are in the last new school application cycle because the authorization window is beginning to close, and that closes on April 4th, 2021. So we have this last cycle that we're completing that'll be completed in December of this year. So we just got notices of intent to apply, meaning that these nonprofits are saying we want to apply, and applications are due at the end of August. The first one is Red Apple Elementary, which is going to be in Linwood. They're at a K-5 elementary. We have Rooted School, Washington, which is going to be in Vancouver High School. We have Rise Up Academy, and that's going to be in South Snohomish County. It's going to be an elementary K-5. Fleur-Son School, which is in the east side of King County, Bellevue area. They're looking at a K-8 model. And then finally, Seattle Day School for African American Studies, which will be in the Seattle King County area, K-5 elementary as well. I don't know a lot about these schools yet because they've just simply given us a 1-page notice of intent to apply. I'll know a lot more in August once the new school applications are received, and then we can have a little bit more robust conversation of what these folks are proposing. In the event that those schools submit full applications, they meet the merits and they are deemed they are deemed by the commissioners themselves to have met the merits and are authorized, then that would bring the portfolio up to just about 20 schools statewide that would be, that the commission would be overseeing. So that's kind of the state of the state. Again, the portfolio that we have, the number of charter schools is doubling, if not nearly tripling over the next 3 years, which brings us to our legislative priorities. So we have 3 priorities right now that are in draft form that I'd like to talk to you about, and then hopefully we can talk more during our time together. The first one is looking at the authorization window and extending that out. It's a 5-year window that's coming to a close, as I mentioned to you before, on April 4th of 2021. With the fits and starts we had in the sector with 2 Supreme Court decisions, one striking down the law, the other one upholding it, just create a lot of uncertainty in the sector. And so we just didn't see the number of charter schools that we think needs to be in place in order to have at least some economies of scale across the sector to allow these charter schools to be given an equitable opportunity, a fair opportunity to be successful. So that's one thing. Keep the cap of 40 schools because that's what's in place. Don't see a reason to lift that, but extend the window out. So make sure that we give more nonprofit organizations, and more importantly than that, to be honest with you, the communities and the students who are asking for additional options, give them the opportunity to see those options come to fruition. So that's our first priority. Second priority is looking at the commission itself. And we need additional support coming in the form of spending authority as well as the ability to hire staff so that we can actually meet the demands of oversight that I've just explained to you is coming down the pike. We're almost tripling our portfolio over the next biennium. We need more staff. Right now I only have 5 staff, and yes, we have a multitude of contractors that we use, which is terrific. However, we need a core group of staff that can continue to move the work forward. So we're looking at that as well. We are positioned uniquely in public education. We are not a general funded agency. We are actually funded out of a tax that is levied against the charter public schools in our portfolio. 3% of the total state funds come back to us so that we can provide authorization and oversight. That fund is appropriated by the legislature. And so they tell us this is how much you can spend out of it on a biennium basis. We want to see that spending authority expanded. Again, that shouldn't impact the state's bottom line. It should ultimately impact our ability to meet the obligations as set forth in the Charter School Act. So that's our second priority. The third is looking at how do we restructure the charter school financial situation for equity and sustainability. Charter schools, we know, are serving a disproportionate number of students with special education that qualify for special education services. Around 17% of all students in the charter school sector qualify for those services. And we know that special education funding, yes, the state has done some work, but there's some work still to go. So that's one area of inequity. Second, I mentioned to you the oversight fee. So that's a tax that is levied against these charter schools so that they can be overseen. That creates inequity. Then the other area, there's 2 other areas. The other area is that they have no access to local levy revenue. Well, I'm not here to debate the merits of that decision that the Supreme Court levied. What I am here to talk about is that the state does have levy equalization funds that they do provide to other types of schools, not just traditional public schools. And we'd like to see charter public schools have access to the state level levy equalization to offset the fact that they are operating in a very, very difficult financial situation. Finally, there is this, whilst charter schools have access to state level matching funds for construction and capital improvements, the way that that system, SCAP, has been set up in the state just does not work for charter schools and how they're funded. And so we'd like to see the state address the capital issue that our charter schools are experiencing. I just mentioned to you one of our charter schools had to take an additional planning year because they had no facility options available to them. And the other is Spokane International Academy. You just approved their transfer to us. Why? Because they couldn't find a facility in the district that they were authorized to operate within. We've got an issue there, and it continues to bear its head, and we'd like to address that through some legislative work. So those are 3 priorities that we're looking at for the 21 legislative session. And so tomorrow when I talk with you, I'd love to answer any questions that you have and dig a little bit deeper into these. So with that said, I just want to say thank you again for inviting me out. I look forward to speaking with you via Zoom tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning. Take care until then.